you can do many different things to give back, but you're right, it is about how do you know, what's your legacy when you pack everything up? You know, what have you left behind? I started in tech, really, even though my grade on my GCSE paper is an F. Opposite Sam. I literally looked at a job spec, and again, maybe it's the ADHD. I was like, I can do that. I'm just going to go for that. I'll learn on the go. You know?
Welcome to this week's episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. And today we are joined by the absolutely fabulous Vanessa Vallely. So a lot of you will know Vanessa, but for you, those of you who don't, she is the leading authority on gender equality and one of the UK's most well-connected women. With a 25-year career in banking and finance behind her, she then launched the award-winning We Are the City in 2008, which supports women's career development across the country. She is an inspiring speaker, and I can say that because I've heard her speak many times. She advises government bodies and corporations on strategies to attract and develop and retain female talent. In 2018, she was awarded an OBE by King Charles for her contributions to women and the economy. And in 2024, she received an honorary Doctorate of Science from Warwick University. She is also the founder of several prestigious awards, and one of which is Rising Stars, which I have been involved in and I absolutely love as a programme, and is also the author of Hills of Steel, Surviving and Thriving in the Corporate World. And I believe her new book is potentially being released this year, so I'm hoping that she will talk to us a little bit about that as well. Vanessa, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I know a little bit about your story, but I'm sure I'm going to learn more about you today. So if I kick off with a really broad question around, kind of tell me a little bit about your journey into adulthood.
Oh, how long we got, Sam?
As long as you like.
Firstly, thank you for having me. You know, I've been watching the podcast episode. Great stories, so it's an honour to be with you. Right, so to your first question. So life started in the East End of London with just me and my mum. So my dad, they kind of split up when I was really, really young. So kind of, I suppose, watching my mum's own work ethic, even at that young age and right the way through it to kind of teenage years, probably has made me the way I am about work. You know, if you want something in life, you've got to work for it. But I kind of rolled through various different primary schools, got chucked out of a lot. I was quite disruptive, known as as the naughty child, if you like. Finally got to kind of secondary school. And the thing was, I was bright, but just weren't applying myself. And I mean, I know why. Obviously, I know about my own ADHD now, but at the time, I didn't. I can look back and see why. You know, I was a little bit, you know, slightly louder and a little bit more disruptive than I should have been. But obviously, you know, ADHD at the time was for boys, right? It weren't for girls. So got through kind of primary school, got up to secondary school. Again, got into a lot of trouble in my early years. You know, growing up in the environment I did, you had access to all things that were kind of quite bad to you, from drink to drugs to, you know, being on the wrong side of the law. It was all kind of there in abundance if you chose to go up that path. And I danced with that path, you know, in my kind of early years, but chose another one. And I think that was built by a lot of things, you know, people telling you what you can and can't do when you come from an area like mine. You know, I mean, everything in our life, we didn't hardly have kind of any money or anything. Like, my mum used to work a day job, and we would clean 4 betting shops and buildings in the city to make ends meet. So from the age of finishing school, meeting her after work, and then going to clean all these buildings, you know, I didn't get in till 11 o'clock at night, which is why I wasn't always that much up for school the next day. And the irony is, some of those buildings that I've cleaned, I've gone back and spoken later on in life. You know, how weird it is. I used to empty the bins here and mop the floors. But again, great resilience in terms of, you know, it was hard work, but it's what we needed to do to kind of make ends meet. And you've got, you know, everything in there, from that kind of being on the breadline, from like period poverty to, you know, missing out on things that other kids were doing, you know, a little bit of bullying in there as well because you didn't dress like the other kids, or, you know, so all of that kind of thing. But this isn't a sob story, because I wouldn't go back and change a thing. It kind of made me who I am, and probably gave me a big reason why I'm so passionate about so many things that I'm passionate about. But kind of came up to that middle, kind of about 14, 15, And the teachers were saying to me, you know, these big dreams that you talk about, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Like, you're not going to achieve any of it without an education. You need to get your head down. And it was thanks to probably 2 or 3 teachers that said, look, we'll put the effort in, but you've got to meet us halfway. And it was those teachers that kind of got me a few GCSEs, still nothing to write home about. But, you know, I come out with certificates, Sam. I was happy with that. But then just had this big dream that I would go and work in the city. And I often tell the story, you know, from my tower block, I could see into the city. I could see all those, that, you know, that I knew that's where the money was made. We didn't have the skyline that we had, but we had one building that was NatWest Tower. And I always talk about, you know, I'd watch the film Wall Street, the original one, and like that financial markets. And, you know, I was no good at maths. I say I was no good at maths. I was all right at maths, but I was like, you know, that's where I want to go and work. And I'm going to take whatever skill set that I can. And I applied for every single job in every bank that was in Liverpool Street. And it was always a bit of a no. I say a bit of a no, it was a definite no. And again, it was bias, right? I was from the wrong side of the tracks. I had this wide Cockney accent, which only comes out when I'm a pearly queen. Well, you can probably still hear it. We'll have to talk about the pearly queen bit.
I was going to say, we're definitely going to come back to that.
I think, and again, I don't know. I just had this deep burning ambition that I would be something. I would be somebody. I would make a difference in some way, and then I would pay that forward back to, you know, people that came from similar backgrounds to me. So I got my first job at NatWest at the bank. That didn't particularly end well. And again, because like you hit situations you don't know how to deal with, you give the wrong answers to things and what have you. So I left there and I thought my world was over, and went into a tech company. And then that kind of takes you into going into the world of work. But, you know, on reflection, I would say growing up in the environment that I did, so we lived in a tower block, there was such a sense of solidarity in that tower block. You know, there was a lot of single mums, and if we didn't have food, one of the other single mums might have sat in her cupboard. You know, there was a wonderful family that lived next door that really looked after my mum, you know, when she was on her own. And my dad kind of came in and out of the picture, but really, really supported her. You know, the lady used to do my hair. She used to plait my hair so tight, like my skin used to go back like that. You know, but she took me, she just helped my mum out a lot. And there was another lady in the corner. She used to do, you know, she had 3 kids. So, and everyone was from different backgrounds and everyone respected that, you know, and, you know, we was all part of this same little bit of an unfair system. But that, I think, very much made me the person I am today. That thing around helping other people and helping other people that don't have what you have, but then also being able to call on them in the same way. So that sense of community, I think, is the essence of who I am, and I think it started there.
And so you got into the world of work, you got into NatWest, got yourself back out again, went into a tech company. Tell me a little bit about that journey from getting into a tech company, all those years in financial services, and then just pivoting completely to We Are
The thing is, when you think I started in tech, right? Because even when I was at school, the one thing that I could do was turn a computer on. So we got computers at in 1988, right? So I could switch one on, and half of my time to get my maths GCSE, it was a computer program where you had to solve puzzles. So I was quite good with computers. So when I went into the tech company, no one in the city was using computers, right? They didn't know how to use software, we didn't have mice in those days. It was all DOS-based commands and stuff. But, you know, everyone was refusing to touch computers because it was going to take their jobs. So the one skill I had is I knew how to use one. So I started there as a receptionist, went into the training department, and that the whole kind of firm was just shipping PCs, keyboards into the city for people to use. Come off a pen and paper. God, it sounds so archaic when I say it like that. Yeah, pen and paper.
Explain to the younger audience what all of that means later.
We used to use pen and paper. So I went into the training department, and kind of my job there was to organise training, but I used to watch the trainers. I'm a people watcher, I always have been. And I watched the trainers and what they were teaching. And even then I thought, I can teach that. Like, you know, I had a lot of confidence at that age. I can get up and teach that. But it wasn't until I left that firm and went into Reader's Digest that an opportunity arose when one of the trainers went sick for me to go and teach one of these kind of software sessions. And I did it and I loved it. You know, I love the thought of teaching people and teaching them new skills. And again, I think a lot of that's still in me today. And then I just went on this journey of learning. So I stayed at Reader's Digest. I'd done a load of training for them, saved them a shed load of money. Voluntary redundancy come up, so I took that. And it was £5,000. Well, think about that. It was a lot of money. I mean, we're talking 40 odd years ago. And I set up my own company. I set up a training company at 21. And I taught myself 20 different applications. You know, back then, again, for those that are of my age, things like Word Star and Lotus 123 and things like that. I used Word Perfect, of which I was a certified trainer. But I taught myself all those things and set up this little business, basically running up and down the country, teaching people how to use software. So I started in tech, really, even though my grade on my GCSE paper is an F, which turned out to be my career. So I started in technology and then dipped out into banking because through the tech route kind of went into, I think it was 9 different financial firms. They weren't all investment banks, retail banks, asset managers, investment managers. And kind of had this strategy around, you know, jumping every kind of 2 years when I was younger to earn the money, to get the money kind of in. And then obviously I met my husband. So we had this more strategic play around, I would sit tight in my job and he would roll forward and travel and stuff like that. And then he would sit tight and then I would go. So we had this very much, how do we make as much money as we can? You know, me from a mindset of security, you know, and building a slightly different life for myself, and him because he was, you know, ambitious. So dual income, but dual ambitious, equally ambitious. And then obviously we had kids, which didn't really stop it, to be honest. We managed to get good support. I mean, the kids still talk to us, even though they don't. We were travelling around the world a lot of the time. But, you know, again, it taught them a good work ethic. And they get it. It's not like we wasn't here any time. We just used to take it in turns. So, you know, me in between India and New York and Stuart in Houston and stuff on the kind of energy side. But, so that was the kind of jump between jobs. And I think, you know, we talk about a lot and it's been rocking around. I think it came from a McKinsey report, but good 12, 14 years ago even, you know, that women don't apply for jobs because they don't kind of see that they've got all the skills. I was always the opposite, Sam. I literally looked at a job spec and again, maybe it's the ADHD. I was like, I can do that. I'm just going to go for that. I'll learn on the go, you know, I'll give myself. So I think a lot of my jobs were a little bit like that, where I just had this amazing sense of self-belief that I could pull it off. And most of the time I did. Because the effort that I put in and stuff like that. I mean, there were a few hairy moments where I was like, how did I get this job? What on earth am I doing? I just kind of winged it. I don't quite know. Like sometimes I look back and I think, how did that happen? But I must have been good because they kept me. They didn't never got sacked. So, you know, I must have been good at some things. So yeah, then just kind of rolled through a number of different contracts. Took some big jobs, like the big job over at Barclays, the COO role was the big one, and kind of again rotated out of there 6 months later. It was a much different place, Barclays, than what it is now. And then, you know, We Are the City had come along by that point, and I'll be honest with you, every time I loved my corporate work, but if I was putting the corporate work and the stuff that I started to do women on a set of scales, it was going like that for the women. I felt the same. I felt this passion in my belly kind of thing every time that I was in a room full of women, and I thought, God, I've learned so much over the past 25 years that maybe I can give some of that knowledge and to other people, but also can I build communities? And I think that's kind of more where I am now around I build communities of people and then I leave them to create magic with each other. And I think we worked out something like, since We Are the City and We Are Tech Women have been set up, we've created 30 communities. Whether they're Thrive20 award winners, you know, social entrepreneurs, Pioneer20, refugee women entrepreneurs, our latest list, Themis20, the lawyers, the rising stars, the tech women, the gender networks, you know, it's creating these communities. So that was my kind of very whistle-stop tour through corporate life, out to this big decision around, actually, I'm going to see what I can do with We Are the City and let me cut our income in half in the household. And kind of hopefully that's going to work out. Watch the car get towed off the drive, all the health insurance, everything like that went. And I did think, I was turning 40 and everyone was like, you're having a midlife crisis. You know, you're just at the height of your career. Why would you go and do something mad like that? And yeah, maybe they was right. But, you know what, that little midlife crisis kind of worked out.
Yeah, I think you can safely say it worked out, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pivot you back to the Pearly Queen.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
very different to running your own business, corporate life. And I
Do
know
you know
it's a
what? If
really
I had
important
my
part
hat
of
to
your
hand, I would
identity.
put it on for you. So Pearly Kings and Queens, and do you know what the funny thing was? I kept this a secret for years in my corporate life, not because for any particular reason, but it was just part of my family history, something I did outside of work that I didn't think would interest anyone. But it's Pearly Kings and Queens are a real national treasure in terms of London's history. You know, started by an orphan boy many, many years ago. Used to work in the markets. You know, no Tesco's. We're talking like 1875, I think he was born. In the markets of London, raising money for charity. He was actually a rat catcher, but he used to raise money for charity for people that were down on their luck, namely the costermongers, so the apple sellers that used to sell costers. And they used to sew buttons down the side of their trousers and the side of their jackets here. They were coster boys, known as flash boys. So he decided to make himself kind of a little bit obvious within the markets. He'd make a whole suit of buttons, and he called himself the Pearly King. And he would work in the markets to raise money for Barnardo's, which is where he came from, and all of these kind of costermongers that were out of work, no social security there. And then he'd become so popular that he decided that he would make a Pearly King and Queen from a family within the 28 boroughs of London. And somehow, my granddad ended up being Pearly King, City of London, and his brother Pearly King, City of Westminster. So he then made all of his kids Pearly Kings of different parts of East London, so everywhere from Shoreditch to Clapton, Haggerston, Hoxton. So my dad was Hoxton, and then I was Pearly Princess of Hoxton. So you've got pictures of me and my buttons at kind of age 2 and 3. They used to roll me out for cuteness, I think, to raise money. Back in the days where we all sang, now I need a good bottle of wine before I sing, because I sound like I was rising after that to myself. But it's been something that's been in the family. So what you do, so because my granddad passed away and then it handed it down to my dad, he was City of London, and then my dad's feet were playing up, so he gave me City of London. So I am now the Pearly Queen, official Pearly Queen, City of London. So you'll see Pearly Kings and Queens in Covent Garden, you'll see us in October. I'm not as active as I used to be, because obviously life gets busy, but you know, anything, Queen's Jubilees, we was in the opening ceremony of the London Olympics. If anyone watches that, that's my family walking around.
Oh, wow.
But we were like an original cast, if you like. But I'll put my suit on and I'll go and raise money. So normally for charities within the square mile. So people like done some stuff for breast cancer unit at Bart's, some men's rehabilitation centres as well. So, you know, opened a building last year. They gave a donation to Bart's for breast cancer as well. So basically anyone wants me to go and open something and squeeze, I say squeeze, because we have to make our pearly suits, and unfortunately made in a fabric that is not stretchable. But if anyone wants me to squeeze into that and put my hat on, then they need to give me a check for charity. So I'm happy to do it, but you know, so yeah, lovely part of my family.
So it's really interesting actually, because you know, you said obviously that community piece and creating community obviously comes from your upbringing in that in the tower block, but clearly is in your genes a kind of wanting to give back. You know, from your granddad doing it, your dad doing it. Clearly, it's in your genes, I think, of having.
And I've been lucky enough to play strategic roles within charity. I mean, I always said I don't have to put my buttons on to kind of help charities. I've sat on a number of boards. You know, I'm currently on MS Together, because many people know obviously my daughter's got MS. That one's very close to me. It's a charity for, you know, youngsters that have been newly diagnosed and don't know what that kind of looks like. And lots of other different charities, Women of Influence for cancer research. So, you know, it's not. You can do many different things to give back, but you're right. It is about how do you know, what's your legacy when you pack everything up? You know, what have you left behind? And it can be as simple as connecting two people together that go on to do magnificent things, to, you know, more strategic things like sitting on charity boards. I like putting on a button suit and a feathered hat, you know, in my case. You know, but also involving charities in everything that we do at We Are the City. You know, there's always a beneficiary there. There's always space at our events for charities or communities that want to have bigger communities. I think that's a fundamental part of who we are, and we have been, you know, since we started. It's not an afterthought by any stretch. It's, okay, we're doing this particular thing. Okay, how do we bring others with us so that their communities can grow as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I've benefited from you connecting me to other people over the years as well. So I know that that's so inherent in who you are. I'm going to take you back a little bit then to your 18-year-old self.
Yeah.
What would your 18-year-old self recognise in you today? What would they go, yeah, I've always been like that, I see that?
You know what, I think within my corporate years I went through a bit of a period of silence, because, you know, you have to toe the line within a corporate around what you can say and, you know, and what you can't say. So I think, you know, I was very vocal at 18 about things I didn't agree with. I kind of learnt to be slightly more tactful than a 16-year-old version of myself, because that had got me into a lot of trouble. But I think probably that. I think I'm more like my 18-year-old self in terms of saying how I feel about things. I mean, I'm obviously not as vocal about some things I'd love to be vocal on, because I'm biding my time until I don't, you know, I'm not so associated with We Are the City, and then, it's all going to come out.
Is that the next book?
That's book 3.
Oh,
you
okay.
won't get that one. I'm joking. It wouldn't be a bestseller, it's not that exciting. But I think that definitely that 18-year-old is more, I'm more like that. I'm more like that now, I think, than I've ever been. And I think as you get older, Sam, and maybe you allude to this, you know, I think you just get less tolerant.
Yes.
You know, you feel like, it's not that, oh God, time's running out or anything like that. I think you're just less tolerant of people's BS, or, you know, situations that don't bring you joy or whatever. You just get to that point where you've had so many practices of those situations and perhaps not speaking up and things going wrong, that you just get to a point in life where you're like, do you know what? I'm just going to tell it how it is. This is how I feel about that particular thing, you know, and this is what I don't want as much as what I do want. I think there's a lot of that. So yeah, I'm more like that 18-year-old.
I think we grow into our power, don't we, as we age. So, So on the flip side, what would your 18-year-old self be absolutely gobsmacked by? Like, what would they be absolutely amazed about who you are today?
Oh God, that I went to Buckingham Palace and I've got an OBE. You would never believe that. But I've got a doctorate. It's the girl with about 3 GCSEs, top range of C to her name, that she did that. You know, it's like, you know, that's such a proud moment within my family. You know, and say we come from. We're not professional. My family's not professional workers. Some of the kids now, my generation and their kids, they're all, you know, got their education. They're all going on to wonderful things, but no, not my generation, not my mum and my dad. So, you know, it may have taken me a little time to wear that cape, and that gown, but it was one of the most happiest days. I still watch my little reel on Instagram; it makes me cry. You know, so for things like that, and I just think, you know, I was reflecting back the other week actually at all the, you know, like. They say that when you leave this earth, right, you've got like a flicker board of things that were happening. I weren't planning on leaving the earth, but I was kind of looking back on all the amazing, joyful things. And every year, right, I get to see them. I get to see, 200 women stand on a stage and get their awards, right? And that, you know, there's no better part of my job than that. But I was flicking back, and I remember a few years ago, International Women's Day, I was asked to speak at Oxford University, and Malala was in my audience. There she was, second row, listening to me. Come on, you're a Nobel Peace Prize winner. What's going on there? You know, so these little moments where I just think I'm accidentally in a room that I never thought I would be, but go away, imposter syndrome. I'm just going to own it. So I think there are so many of them, you know, clippings that I've kept from little magazines that I've been in, or things like that the kids can kind of look back on when I'm no longer here. I keep talking about that, don't I? But that, I just think there's so many things that I never thought that would happen in my lifetime that I've been blessed with. And there's not a day, Sam, that goes past that I don't realise how blessed I am. And I'm grateful for it.
And I think that is, knowing you as I do, just inherent in who you are. You know, because you are grateful, but you also pay it forward. You always pay it forward.
I mean, you've got to help other people, because, like, you know, whether or not, I think whatever happens that you know, we have these experiences in life, right, or situations, are good and bad, that you learn from, right, and you can pay that forward in terms of advice that you give to people. But I often see, if I sat here for an hour, I could think in my mind, who could I open up a door of opportunity for? who have I spoken to that has got an aspiration to do this, and who do I know that's already doing it, that's got there, that I know for a fact if I sent them an email, they too are of the pay it forward mindset, and they would come to help me to help this person. If I could have a job where I spent my entire days, and someone paid my bills obviously, just doing that, I could fill my days. I could fill 7 hours of my days doing that.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. And I think, why would you not? Why would you not help other people? And I get it, sometimes in the world of business, you know, there's competition and stuff like that, or if I share my crown jewels, but you know my feelings on that, there's space enough for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? And I do think these things, serendipity, right? I do think, is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
You know, these things have a habit of coming back. Do good in the world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think karma is an amazing thing.
100%. And I've seen that play out both ways. Do you know what I mean? And I'm absolutely paranoid. Like, literally, if I walk through Liverpool Street Station and I've not got cash and someone asks me for money, and I know, like, sometimes, you know, they say you shouldn't give money and stuff like that. I'm all over that on the train the whole way, you know. I've gone to a cash point, and this isn't me saying I'm Mother Teresa, and I've gone back and I've given the person money because I'm like, you know, if you can help somebody, you know, why would do it? Do it while you can. Yeah. And do you know what? Sometimes I've been pondering and waiting for something to happen, and the following week it happens, and I'm like, that's because you've done good, you know. So, yeah. I'm a little bit obsessive over it, if I'm honest, but.
I'm a great believer in that kind of manifestation of just the attitude you take, I think makes a big difference. Touching on that, if you think about, we've all had rejection and failure in our lives, and how we deal with it is so important to kind of what you do next. Can you tell me about one of those experiences you've had where you've had to deal with rejection and kind of how that's formed you?
I mean, in the job that I do now, I get rejections every day. Trying to get people to pay for things. I kind of got a very thick skin about it. I think in terms of rejection, I mean, I always play back to, I was working in one particular job and I'd really sold my soul to this job, Sam. Do you know what I mean? I'd risked a lot. Like, I was there more or less 24 hours at the time. I weren't seeing the kids, didn't see my husband. I'd kind of rocked to the very foundations of home, on the basis that if I did this work, I'd get this promotion. And, you know, and that's all I kept saying at home, you know, I've just got to make it to this particular point and we'll get the promotion, it'd be a bit more money, and then, you know, thinking strategically of where I needed to go. And I didn't get it because it went to the person that was probably equally as peed off as I was the previous year. You know how it works, right? And I was devastated. I was absolutely, you know, I remember going home on the train to tell my husband that I never got this promotion. And it may sound silly to other people, but it meant so much to us. It was a house move at the end of that, more space, you know, better things for us as a family. And the amount I'd risked for that. And I felt embarrassed. I felt like overly ambitious. You know, just all the stuff that you kind of feel. And it really knocked some sense into me. One about, and I mean this in the nicest sense, but a job's just a job. Right, and I think I can say this now, I'm on the other side of it, and those home foundations and things like that are the most important thing on your list, and no job in the world is worth rocking that for. I think also being a little bit naive as well. I was a little bit naive as to how the system worked, and you know that sometimes you do everything that you can, but at the end of the day you're just a number in an oracle system in these firms. Sorry to say it, but as I say, I can say it now, I'm out of it. So all of that. And it really taught me a strong lesson, I think, about how I approach the world of work, I think. And even then, I mean, don't get me wrong, I went on to work just as hard, but I didn't take things as personal at work. You know, I knew my value, I was a little bit more upfront of it, and I had the courage to say, well, actually, I'm not doing that because there's nothing at the end of it. Kind of thing, or a little bit more pushback. Okay, so if I need to get to here, what does that look like? What do you need to see me demonstrate? So my questioning was a lot more braver and a lot more bolder. So I think that was the biggest rejection, and maybe because I was younger as well, you know, that kind of knocked me a little bit for six.
But very formative, as we know, failure.
Yeah, but that's the advice that I pass on now, and now I think, well, that happened for a reason, because you know, I can now pass on that experience to, you know, as I say, be ambitious, be bold, go and get it, what it is that you kind of want, but also make sure that you set your stall out in terms of what that looks like back for you. You know, don't be the girl like I was, where they'd give me a titchy bonus compared to everyone else's, and yet I'd worked what I felt was the hardest, and I'd go, oh, thank you, I'm really grateful. See, 2025 Vanessa, in fact 2005 Vanessa wouldn't have been like that. I'd have been, hold on a minute, we need a conversation here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's things like that kind of stepped me in. I mean, as I say, there's been so many disappointments and stuff like that, but as I say, I think as you get older you learn how to navigate them. Ultimately, it's not to do with family or people that you love or stuff like that. Most of the things are, you're able to navigate them in some way.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, kind of your reaction to failure or rejection, but also the decisions you make off the back of it. So tell me, what's the best decision you've ever made as an adult?
I can say it now, but I wouldn't have said it at the time, was probably giving up corporate. When I look back, even to the age of 10, when I was shrinking crisp packets, I don't know if you know that, I don't know if the plastic works this way these days, right? But back in my day, you could get a crisp packet, you put it in the oven for a couple of minutes and it would shrink down to a miniature size of that crisp packet. And I used to make key rings and earrings and sell them. So I was always an entrepreneur, Sam. I was just an entrepreneur that accidentally fell into corporate. And if you think about setting up my training company, that was entrepreneurship. And I know that within my corporate roles, the reason I was so successful in some of them was because I was an entrepreneur. I was almost running mini businesses and mini communities and sales and products and things like that. And that wasn't a core part of my job, but in a corporate setting. So I think the best decision, although I say I didn't think it at the time, was actually leaving corporate and doing what I do today. And looking back now on all those communities and award winners and conferences and the people that I know, incredible women like yourselves and loads of others that you've interviewed on this podcast, you know, and no doubt we'll go on to interview, just this really strong community of women that I've got around me when I have my moments, you know, like during COVID, like we was all on the phone to each other pulling our hair out, you know. So just having that support system and being able to be that support system for other people.
Yeah.
And life would look a lot different without that, you know. I probably still would have been in corporate, still flying around the world and trying to make it up the scale and living for whatever bonus they was going to give me. So whereas, and also I love being my own boss. I realise now I was never meant to work for anyone. I really apologise to any of my previous bosses, by the way. I know I was a handful.
It's a very common theme for the entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, actually, is actually one that they learn of actually I much prefer working for myself and taking full responsibility for those decisions. Yeah. So very clear best decision, albeit, you know, probably a pretty scary one at the time.
Yeah, 15 years to get over that one, Sam, if I'm honest. As much as it was the best decision, I still question it on certain days.
And we all get given lots of advice, whether we want it or not, right? So what's the best piece of advice, like really good advice that you got given that you just completely ignored?
I wouldn't say I completely ignored it. The best thing is, a boss told me years ago that people are integral to your success and the relationships that you build. You know, and I tried that. I tried the solo rider in some of my jobs, just me focus, my career and stuff. No one's coming with me. Soon realised that wasn't the way to go. So I think, you know, I've spent my life building relationships and building networks and building people. So I think anyone who told me, you know, that you can get there on your own, that was a load of old rubbish, because you need people around you, support systems, and stuff like that. So
yeah, completely.
That would be it. Don't ride solo.
So, as you know, it's called The Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. And as you also know...
I don't know if I'm grown up yet, Sam.
Well, that's a very common theme as well, because I think that's kind of why I started it, because I don't feel like a grown-up either, and I really wanted to talk to other grown-ups, and they all tell me none of them feel like grown-ups either. So I think that's very reassuring for maybe some of our younger listeners to realise that no one ever feels like a grown-up, so it's not just them. And as you know, because you've given me some advice around writing a book, because you have written a fantastic book, and I know you're in the process of writing the second. I'm really waiting for the third of all of your inner thoughts, but we'll come back to that. So, you know, if I actually managed to write this as a book and we had an actual beginner's guide, what is the one thing that you would put in that guide to kind of pay it forward to somebody else who hasn't worked out whether they're a grown up or not? What's your one big thing?
And there's two schools of thoughts on this, right? There's a team that think that women are born confident and lack of confidence is something given to us by the patriarchy to kind of hold us down. And then there's a school of thought that actually admits we all lapse confidence in certain situations at certain times. I think it's stories of times when we've not felt confident and the strategies that we've used to overcome it. I think, I still talk to my communities every single week, where it's on WhatsApp, where it's leadership programs that we run or whatever, and it comes up, Sam, every single time. And it doesn't mean that, it's not an imposter syndrome, it's moments of where we lack confidence in certain settings or whatever, and how do we overcome those moments? Not labelling ourselves as unconfident in any way, it's just how do we deal with those moments? And I think if we was a little bit more open and we shared them a little bit more, I think it's the biggest gift we could give, and just that acknowledgement that we all have those moments. I'm a public speaker, I stand up and talk in front of like hundreds and hundreds of people, and I still have those moments where I walk in a room and I'm like, for whatever reason, I just don't feel confident.
Yeah.
So that's got to be in there. And I think and I also think, although you could write in a book and tell people stories, there will still be those moments.
Yeah.
As well. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah. It's okay not to be confident all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful, because I think people expect us to put ourselves forward all the time. And actually, you're right. Every single one of us walk into a room or get a piece of work to do or have a problem to solve in your business and go, oh.
Yeah. What do I do? But this is the point about having that network around you, because I've had the beauty of having years to build up this network, and that's what I want to give to other women, right? So when we have those moments, and I see it on my own WhatsApp groups from my communities, that they're in a safe space that they can say, I've got this to do, I've never done it before. Anyone got any advice? So the gift of the network, the gift of community to wrap around someone will make those moments smaller and smaller. I see one of our ladies, one of our Rising Star winners, going to do a TED Talk for the first time or whatever, and the love that is outpouring from those groups on that, she's full of fire when she's on that stage. We're all behind her, whether we're physically with her, but it's just having that group of people, men, women, whoever it is, just having people around you that, give you that confidence boost that you need when you need it, which is, as you say, isn't every day.
I think that's so important. So I'm going to encapsulate that into its two things, which is it's absolutely okay and normal to have moments where you're not feeling as confident as you think you should, and use your community around you to help you in those moments, because they're going to want to help you, because that's why we have a community.
We've all had them, Sam.
Yeah.
I think even if when I've gone into a thing, if I've gone in doing one of my talks and I asked the question, is anyone like super confident? Has anyone never had moments where they lack confidence? If anyone puts their hand up, I'm rugby tackling them because I want to know the answer. I want to know what it is.
What's the secret?
What is the secret? Because I want to share it.
Yeah.
And everyone's different as well, different personalities and stuff like that. So, I think just to say, don't be too hard on yourself, and as they use the community around you, really, when you have those moments when you're not too sure, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I'm definitely going to get that in the book when it gets written. Vanessa, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know everyone who's listening is going to take loads away from it. Being a pearly queen and the history of that, and your background to kind of, striking out on your own, and that real importance around being a community and showcasing other women. I know it's just fundamentally just, it's in your DNA. For those of you who don't know about Rising Stars, and I'm going to give it a big up, it's a fantastic set of awards. The nominations are currently open, so we'll put some info in our bio and in the speaker in the notes from today, because I love the awards, Vanessa, and I think anything we can do to really hold up. Anything that we can do to hold up people trying to make a difference, I think we should. So Vanessa, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and I've learnt lots, and I already knew you, so it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. If you enjoyed it, please like, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If there's someone who inspires you that you'd like me to interview, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram and TikTok. In the meantime, enjoy being a grown-up.